talk about pitchers. I'm gonna give Cardi the floor to explain. Since he wrote up pitchers today, I'm just gonna let him go in depth with the Adam Wainwright thing and tell everyone in chat why the sample size against the Cubs doesn't matter. So, floor is yours, Cardi.
Yeah, Wainwright's my top guy today. I think Wainwright and Price. I mean, there's a few aces going today. I think Wainwright and Price are the two you have to consider the most. I know Davis is going to disagree with me, and I'm very excited to hear why. But I think Wainwright against the Cubs and Arrieta is just a great matchup. The Cubs are, a weak offense. Wainwright is awesome. Seattle's relatively weak too, and they're very lefty heavy, so Price matches up well with them. He also gets a bit of a park upgrade. Iwakuma's not an ideal opponent, but I can deal with it given that all the other factors are kind of working in his favor. So those are the two cash game plays that I'm kind of looking at today, with Beckett being also maybe a potential cash game play, but maybe not necessarily what I'm going to go for given these other two options.
Okay, Drew, are you on board with Wainwright as the top pitching play today?
Yeah, I think the gap between him and Price isn't severe enough that the price warrants on some sites. Like FanDuel, the price gap, you're paying for a win there, so I don't mind that. But on the other sites, where there's like, 15, 20% difference in price between Wainwright and David Price, I'd rather go Price. But I don't mind Wainwright at all. I'm like Hardy. It's a small sample issue with the whatever ownage over the Cubs, and it's just noise in the sample, so I'm not really concerned about it. But if you are concerned about it, Price is a great option. So you can't really go wrong with either of those two, in my opinion.
All right, and this is why both of you are wrong. We play a game based off of strikeouts. Last night, Jesse Chavez only allowed 2 less earned runs than Felix Hernandez did, and he was infinitely more valuable on FanDuel. You take that shirt off, Drew. As of right now, Steven Strasburg is leading the majors in K per 9 because Jose Fernandez has Tommy John and is not playing. I believe his xFIP is second best in the majors right now, and he's averaging 6.3 innings pitched per start. And the Diamondbacks are not a particularly scary lineup at all. I don't really see why you would want to go Wainwright over Strasburg given the K upside. I understand the matchup thing, but I think that there is enough validity in the fact that out of Wainwright's 7 last starts versus the Cubs, only one of them was a quality start. I mean, at some point we have to say that 6 or 7 starts is a legitimate sample size, and I'm going to let Derek refute that right now.
At some point we have to say it's a legitimate sample size, but it's definitely not at 6 or 7 starts. It's like way beyond that. So, I don't know.
You guys know I went to Vegas on the heels.
Yeah,
What about Vegas?
The Vegas point is a good one. Wainwright is 2 times as much of a favorite as Strasburg is today.
I went to Vegas as basically on the heels of Cubs against Waino and the Mariners with Matt Cain. So last night was a little bit of a reminiscing with both the Cubs and Mariners going nuts. So I don't know. It's always good to be contrarian. But my thing was the rule of large numbers says at some point Waino has to dominate the Cubs just because it's the Cubs. Like, I think tonight's that night. I don't have a problem with
in terms of strikeouts, the Cubs strike out a lot. And I think you're kind of underselling Davis, the quality of Arizona's offense. I think they're better than you and a lot of other people are giving them credit for.
I'm about to pull up the team batting stats right now, and kind of because I did this morning and I kind of forgot. I do think it's worth noting though that when I was looking at the Cubs lineup earlier, they do have lots of lefties or switch hitters towards the top of the lineup, and that's something that I look for. If the top 5 guys in an order are on the opposite hand, it's sort of my belief that enhances pitch count as well as increases the chances for a blow-up because there aren't easy outs there in the middle of like the heart of the order.
I think that's definitely something you need to take into consideration, but when one of those lefties is Luis Valbuena, it's very much less of a concern.
Drew?
Yeah, I mean, I think the argument that I'd make is the one that Tommy was making in chat, which is simply you want to talk about the Cubs dominating him. Who are the guys that have been in those lineups before? I mean, Rizzo and Castro and Shearholtz were there last year. Wellington Castillo was there last year. Junior Lake wasn't really. Bonifacio wasn't. Valbuena played a little bit last year in a platoon situation. So like, I think the argument is a little bit shaky ground to stand on that they have some sort of ownage on him.
I don't agree with that argument. I'm just making that case because I've already seen that on Twitter today, and I've heard it discussed several times over the last several weeks, especially when Wainwright did poorly against the Cubs last time. It was a big thing on Twitter. I don't give any credence to it. I just think Strasburg is a better pitcher, and the K upside, just from a pure pitcher skills standpoint, Strasburg could strike out 20 guys today. Like, that is absolutely in play every time he takes the mound. You know, I'll never forget his debut when he struck out 14 Pirates. Like, he has that stuff in him all the time. And just from that perspective, if what we're going for is strikeouts to get the most amount of points possible, I think Strasburg gives your lineups the most amount of upside.
Yeah, I agree with pure upside, but I don't know that if we're talking about probabilities of attaining, certain point thresholds, I think Wainwright's probabilities of attaining, 15 FanDuel points are probably higher than Strasburg. Strasburg is probably higher of getting 20. And so, it depends on what you're aiming for.
Well, and you guys both mentioned pitching against Arrieta as something to be looking for, but Strasburg's pitching against Bronson Arroyo, who, Arroyo, no one in chat say anything. So I don't necessarily, I understand that Vegas makes him less of a favorite, and that's due to the relative strength of the lineup. The Diamondbacks are not an awful lineup. I wouldn't say that they're bottom 5 or anything.
It's also, I don't like the Diamondbacks lineup tonight. The fact that
at the very least, they're an average lineup, and I think they may be better than that. I think the Diamondbacks are a good hitting team.
The park is tough. The thing for me about Arroyo, I would be careful trashing Arroyo just because he's like Bartolo Colon. He sucks against lefties. He's really good against righties. And the Nats lineup doesn't have a lot of lefties in it. They're going to have Espinosa, who's going to hit from the switch side. They're down LaRoche. They're down Bryce Harper. So it's going to be pretty righty heavy. So I think it's a better matchup for Arroyo than typical because of how right-handed heavy that Washington lineup is.
Okay. I think that's probably enough discussion on that. We spent 10 minutes on guys that are going to pretty much be automatic plays. So let's get into second-tier guys. And we might have some disagreement here, too, because I think there's 3 secondary pitching options that you should really be looking heavily at tonight. I think it's Garrett Cole is probably at the top of that second tier. Then I think Mike Minor is probably in there. But my favorite second option, especially on DraftKings, is Drew Pomeranz, a guy who was a top prospect for a long time, kind of bumped around a couple organizations. He was part of the Ubaldo Jimenez trade. He was in the Rocky system, went to the Indians. We've seen that the Indians cannot handle pitching prospects at all. So I really like him tonight against the White Sox. Who is your favorite secondary option, Cardi?
It's definitely Josh Beckett against the Marlins at home. I love Beckett in general. I don't think he gets enough credit. I think he's a good pitcher, and he's up against, one of the weakest offense in baseball. So I feel like he's a pretty easy call. I think the other guys you mentioned are all on my radar, but I don't think they're as good as Beckett.
Okay, you should, I think that Beckett sort of has an attitudinal thing going against him. His own percentages are pretty low because he's been really bad at some points. So I think you should talk about his performance this year and why you like him tonight.
I mean, it's just I feel like just over the past few years in general, Josh Beckett just doesn't get enough love. In the year-long crowd, he doesn't, get a lot of, attention because he's hurt a lot. He's kind of had some bad luck at times, but he's also pitched in the American League up until a couple years ago, so you kind of have to adjust for that. If you look at what he's done with the Dodgers, I mean, his peripherals are all really good. All of his xFIPs are all, in the the mid to high 3s range, and he's just a good pitcher. It's not like he's striking out 10 guys per 9, but he's going to strike out 8. He's going to have decent control, and he's going to get the job done.
Yeah. All right, Drew, who's your favorite secondary guy?
I mean, I'm trying to keep it as much as I can between Price and Wainwright on sites that I can fit those two in. On sites that the pricing's a little bit tougher, I do like Minor. his big issue is home runs, and that park's one of the toughest for home runs in all of baseball. It's not a great matchup in terms of strikeouts and in terms of, the Giants are a pretty good offense against left-handed pitching. So that part is a little bit frustrating. But Miner's price is way, way down. Like he's like 30% discounted from Beckett on most sites. So like I think they're maybe similar pitchers. Maybe Miner's a little bit better and Miner's a lot cheaper. So I'm kind of looking in that range. I do like Pomerantz, and I picked him up in some season-long leagues. I was trying to convince Mike to go heavy on him in NFBC, and we ended up just shy on the bid. But the one thing that concerns me a little bit is just the White Sox.
Drew, we gotta go Kluber. We gotta go Kluber, Drew. We
gotta get Corey Kluber, dude.
Drew, you're not.
You're on the wrong side of that argument.
You're not going Pomerantz, Drew. I cannot have a guy in my lineup named Pomerantz.
Drew, we can't drop Mark Burley. Drew. I think Pomerantz is in a really similar position to Chavez last night. I mean,
the difference is Pomerantz is left-handed and Chavez is right-handed, and so he's not tune advantage.
Yes, but what the point I'm trying to make is that Leone's in chat and he's not happy. But the guys who can hurt you in the Chicago lineup are power hitters. Yes, Abreu double-donged last night, but Oakland is still not a home run park. So I think that using Pomerantz, especially he is $6,000 on DraftKings. Like that is just stealing. So I think, and especially on Draft Street, you can play Strasburg, Garrett Cole, and Drew Pomerantz without really breaking much of a sweat with your hitters, and I think that's a pretty good spot to be in. Am I wrong on Pomerantz, Cardi?
Pomerantz comes with the pedigree, but I'm just not buying into him really yet as a guy that I can trust to do anything, especially in a matchup that isn't stellar. I mean, Chicago is a pretty good offense. Obviously some of that is inflated by playing in U.S. Cellular, and they're the complete opposite today in Oakland, parks-wise. But they are a pretty good offense, so I don't know. I think there's better options than Pomerantz. I don't think we've talked at all about Jake Peavy yet, who got slated in there instead of Dubron today. I think
he's walking 5 batters per 9, so I'm not particularly... And I know that you're going to say that's noise.
I think there's a good enough chance that it's noise that, given the matchup, you should play him. Like, he's definitely like a very good, second pitcher option for a GPP kind of guy.
Drew, are you on board with that sentiment?
Yeah, I like PV. It's another thing with like price point to me. If you can find a good price on him, I like him a lot. That's a huge benefit in both matchup and ballpark shift for him. A good chance at a win against Nolasco. So I do like PV.
All right. Cool. I definitely... Dave just typed in the turndownforwhat.com link on chat, so that's pretty cool. I mean,
let me just read off the bottom 3 for Minnesota's lineup tonight, okay? Eduardo Nunez, Eduardo Escobar, and Danny Santana. Now tell me if you've heard of any of those guys.
Pretty sure Nunez played...
Nunez, I'm sure, because he was a Yankee, but...
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, that's just a pathetic lineup, I mean...
The last time we did this, it was when Matt Cain played the Padres, and he was just a mess. Like, that's the last time I can remember making the argument, like, that's not even a AAA lineup, and Cain got trashed. So, superstition on my end there. Are there any other GPP options that we need to mention before we move on to hitters? I think pitching is pretty clear-cut tonight, at least on my end. Maybe it's more muddled for you guys.
I think there's other options. I don't think you necessarily need to stray too far, but I think Harrison's an option. I think Estrada's an option. I think Mike Leake is an option.
Then we will get to argue because I like the Astros tonight.
Do you?
Yeah.
I think there's definitely concerns with Harrison, and I mentioned it in the article. He hasn't really completely proven yet that he's healthy. He's definitely struggling with his control in his first few starts back. So I can see the Astros getting to him. But that's why he's a GPP play and not someone that I'm like really saying you should be all over.
Okay. Drew, anyone else that you would like to mention?
Yeah, if you want to go way off the radar, I don't mind Dallas Keuchel.
I was
Like,
actually going to say that too. I picked him up to stream in the 13-team league that Jordan Case and I co-own. I think
you
he's
were
in a really
not
good
going
spot.
to say that, Davis.
He was in my draft street lineup until I realized that I could get Cole in if I just downgraded a few hitters.
I mean, look, it's risky because Texas, has some good hitters, but most of their good hitters are lefty and aren't very good against left-handed pitching. Chu is an abomination. Fielder's all right, but he's certainly not what we're accustomed to with Fielder. So Beltre's the big bat you really have to worry about. And, the rest, Michael Choice, whether it's JP Arancibia or Robinson Chirinos, there's guys you can pitch around there. Keuchel's got a great ground ball rate, over 60% this year, and he's improved his strikeout rate. So I think he's very off the radar, but I think that's an interesting GPP play.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Are you on board with that, Cardi?
I mean, certainly off the radar. I think Texas is scary, but I can see some of the logic behind it. I mean, I just think you got to have, a huge set of balls to go for that. Because, Texas is a lot better than they've been letting on. So,
Drew, show him your shirt and let him know.
How big my balls are?
By the way, everyone, I'm talking to Leone right now, and he's informed me that he's going to be me on the Friday show in retaliation for Kitchen and I using the Leone voice. So be excited for that.
My
Moving
name is
on.
Davis Maddock.
All right, let's talk about hitters. The first thing we need to do is in changing streams, we need to talk about stacks. I'm going to talk about mine last because I don't think that either one of you are going to agree with me too much. So I'm going to let Cardi go first with one of his stacks, then let Drew go.
all right, one of my stacks, Philadelphia stack, up against at home in Citizens Bank Park against Matt Shoemaker tonight. It's his second major league start ever. He's a non-prospect, doesn't have great stuff. The numbers in the minors are okay, but in that park where there's so many lefties that you can stack against him, I think that's a good option tonight.
Are you on board with that, Drew?
Yeah, I like that spot. Shoemaker, looking at his minor league numbers, really struggled with the long ball a lot, like consistently over 1.2 home runs per nine. You bring that to the major leagues, you bring it to Citizens Bank, a park that inflates home runs. I think that's a good spot for the power lefties. Utley, Howard, Dominic Brown, I think are all in good spots.
Okay, then I'm going to talk about. Well, no, I'll let you give yours first, Drew.
The team with the highest team total today is the Oakland Athletics. Scott Carroll is a journeyman guy. Was pitching like in high A last year for some starts. He's not very good. He's been crushed by lefties. The A's loaded up with lefties. And there's guys that you can get in there because they've got some injuries, like no Coco Crisp. You have less threat of guys getting pinch hit for late in the game that you usually worry about. And you see that with their lineup because they've got Derek Norris and Craig Gentry, two of those platoon players they usually use late in the game. They've got them in the lineup now. So I think you've got a little bit more security in plate appearances than you usually do because of how banged up the A's are with their starters. So you got cheap prices on guys like Jed Lowry. Jace's price has risen a little bit. Moss is still priced down. Reddick is pretty cheap on a couple sites. So I like the A's.
Yep, I stacked the A's last night. I basically, every time the A's are up against a bad pitcher, I think they're a pretty good bet. They're a super underrated offense. People don't think of them as being a powerful, run-scoring offense, but they're a top 5 offense in the league. But my stack, as I mentioned, is going to be the Astros. Basically because what's the problem with the Astros? They strike out all the time. That's all they do. Well, for his career, Matt Harrison has a 14.5% K rate. And this year, he has a 12.5% K rate and a 12.5% walk rate. And once they get into the pen, I basically think that they're in a good hitting environment. I guess I haven't looked at the totals yet. I assume that the total is relatively high. And I just think that they're in a good spot tonight, especially with Springer hitting second because he's so affordable everywhere. Altuve is a solid leadoff option. And then basically the Astros have 8 outfielders who are all the same player. You can't tell me that Jesus Guzman and Matt Dominguez and Mark Krause are a different player. They're all the exact same price on every site, and they all have similar statistical profiles. And I think if you choose a couple guys who are hitting in the top 3 or 4 of that order, I think you're actually going to be in a pretty good spot against Harrison tonight.
I think the one thing that's tough about stacking Astros against Harrison is Harrison's kind of an extreme ground ball pitcher. So there's 2 things that hurt you when you try to stack against ground ball pitchers. The first is it limits the home run upside. The second is ground ball pitchers tend to have a way of limiting big innings by getting double plays. So there's 2 factors that is reasons I try to choose to stack against fly ball oriented pitchers, which is one of the reasons that this one would fall down my list.
Okay, Cardi, am I wrong?
I don't think you're wrong. I don't think it's towards the top of my stacking list today, but I don't think it's terrible. And I agree with Dink. I mean, ground ballers, do tend to prevent big innings a little bit more than fly ballers do. So,
okay. The one thing that I would like to say about that is that, from what I understand, because as I mentioned on the show before, I'm reading the book, and I just got done with the little bit where they talked about platoon splits when looking at ground ball, fly ball splits, and basically you want fly ball hitters against ground ball pitchers in all contexts, but specifically in a daily context, because when a ground ball pitcher isn't able to keep the ball down, it leaves the park, is essentially what happens. So that's the logic there, but we don't need to talk about this anymore. The Astros, it's not a percentage play. I'm not saying that everyone should do it. It's just going to be something that I'm using in my games. But let's start by talking about catcher. Are you paying up for Posey tonight, Drew?
No, just because I'm more prone to spend on pitching, so I don't really have leftover budget to allocate towards Posey. So I'm looking at kind of the mid-tier of catchers. Jaso is great leading off. McCann, short porch and right field, and Wheeler has struggled with command against left-handed bats, so he might be able to get himself into some favorable accounts. You add in a really bad bullpen behind Wheeler, that adds some amplifying effect to McCann's matchup. So those are 2 of the guys. I like Alex Avila's matchup quite a bit, but I wish he was hitting in a better spot. 8th is it's tough, and it introduces more risk of getting in at bat against a left-handed pitcher late in the game because of the bullpen. So he's on my list, but he's a little bit further down from McCann and Jaso.
Yeah,
I don't.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say I just saw the Oakland lineup with Jaso leading off. He's locked in for me absolutely everywhere. Not really a price high enough for me to fade a catcher leading off.
Yeah, I like Jaso a lot. I'm not paying up for Posey tonight, not against Minor. I think Salvador Perez is a really good option if you want to spend a little bit more than you would on like Jaso. I think he's in a really good spot. He's batting cleanup tonight against Franklin Morales. Got the platoon split working in his favor, so I think he's a really good option tonight.
Yeah, I agree with Sal Perez. And they're actually, Jaso's price has risen to the point that they're pretty similar across the industry. So I don't mind going that route. I'm tending to lean Jaso just because I want more exposure to the A's because I like their offense overall. But Perez does rate higher in our model for what it's worth.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's about all. I honestly don't think the catcher conversation needs to last that long. I think Jaso is clearly the number 1 option with Perez not too far behind versus Morales. So let's talk about first base, because today I actually don't think that there's a clear-cut guy that you want, especially with the Detroit-Baltimore game being threatened by rain. So who tops out your first base list, Cardi?
I think there's some options tonight. I think Adrian Gonzalez looks good. I think Freddie Freeman looks good in terms of the top guys tonight. I think Ryan Howard's definitely an option on there. So yeah, those are the first basemen I'm looking at tonight.
Okay. Dink?
Yeah, my boy Brandon Moss, crushes
Moss.
right-handed pitching. Great spot. So I like Moss. I do like Howard a lot just because there's big home run upside with that matchup. And the Angels bullpen behind Shoemaker isn't very good either, so there's amplification effects there as well. Billy Butler, if you want to go really cheap, not a bad spot for him. And his price is way down. So I agree with most of the picks that Cardi gave off, but Butler and Moss are 2 guys that I'm looking at as well.
Yeah, they're definitely on my radar for me too. Both really good matchups.
I mean, I would use CJ Cron because I'm expecting him to get like at least 1 pinch hit dong, but I feel like the upside with Moss is like a little bit higher. Yeah, I honestly when Moss is in the right platoon split and like he's affordably priced because he's gotten some at bats versus left-handers the last couple days, so his price is like a little bit lower on DraftKings and FanDuel. I just think you have to take advantage of that on days when like Ortiz and other guys like that are not affordable or not in like a particularly good spot.
Yeah, and I mean, if you can afford, like Miggy's in a great spot in Baltimore against Jimenez, who has, his splits are a little bit weird. He allows a higher on base average to right-handed bats, but a lot more power to left-handed bats. But that park is a great boost for him. So Miggy, if you can afford, or if you're doing something contrarian and going like Pomerantz, as your one starter in a GPP lineup, I think Miggy's a great bet. I don't mind Ortiz against Napoli. It's just that park's really tough for left-handed power.
Okay, and do either one of you guys have any love for Mark Teixeira versus Wheeler tonight?
No.
Price is up, and he's a guy, at least for us, that we've always seen him as a great hitter against left-handed pitching, very good from the right side of the plate, and very mediocre against right-hand pitching. He's hit bombs against right-hand pitching this year, so maybe he's turning it back around. He's a little bit more neutral early in his career, but the price is up because he's hit some bombs lately. So I'm not interested.
Okay, and one more question before we move on. Victor Martinez, paying up for him?
It's a great spot. He's not. I don't have that kind of money. So with the way I'm choosing my lineup, so he's not on my radar. But I don't mind that matchup at all.
Yeah, he's all right, but I'm not paying up for him. I don't think Jimenez is terrible. The park shift is nice, but I think there's other options. So.
Okay, yeah. Then I think that we can move on. I did the positions out of order, so we're just gonna end up going around the diamond. Let's talk about some second basemen right now. Second base is kind of ugly tonight. I haven't really been able to find anyone that I liked, and that was how I ended up on Altuve. Was just saying, leading off against a pitcher that I don't think is great. So who are some second basemen that you're looking at, Cardi?
I think Altuve is definitely on my list. I think Giavotella, he's not in a great batting spot in the lineup. He's batting 7th tonight, but I think he's a good play. He's pretty cheap. I wouldn't even kill anyone who wants to go with Howie Kendrick. I mean, Cliff Lee is obviously great, but as a contrarian play, the park shift is so good, and he does have the platoon advantage that I don't think he's a terrible play. Who else? I don't know. That's kind of, I guess, who I'm looking at.
Okay. Dink?
Yeah, I'll add in Espinosa, who's really cheap. Arroyo's really homer prone to left-handed bats. I generally like Danny from the right side a little bit more than from the left side, and we don't have a lineup out on them yet. But that's a great park for power, and Arroyo serves them up, so I don't mind him at all. The other guy that like Giavotella is like minimum price on DK 2,000, frees up a lot of room. Valencia is also second base eligible on DK. And I like him. He's hitting one spot ahead of Giavotella. He's a little bit better hitter against left-handed pitching. He's more likely to get subbed out later in the game, but he's a little bit closer to that middle of the order.
I think D. Gordon should definitely be added to the list too against Jacob Turner tonight. Yeah.
Oh yeah, if we're going expensive too, like if I can afford, Chase Utley is a guy that I'm targeting heavily, but I'm not in that spot on most sites right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I really like the Valencia option, especially on DraftKings. I think that he's a player who, anytime a platoon player, the first couple days that they're a full-time player and they have the skills of the platoon advantage, I think it's a pretty good idea to target them and just take advantage of that fact. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about some shortstops tonight. Are either one of you paying up for Tulo as of right now?
Nope.
Doesn't have the platoon advantage on the road and in a pitcher's park against a good pitcher. It just doesn't make any sense at all to pay up for Tulo tonight.
Then are we all running back the Lowry train again?
I think Lowry is definitely a good pick tonight. I think Reyes is a good pick tonight. I think...
Dink, do you like Grant Green on FanDuel with shortstop eligibility? Hitting
shortstop eligibility?
Yeah, he does on FanDuel.
Yeah, no, I'd rather. Jet's not expensive, so like 2,900 for Jet on FanDuel is for me. That's kind of locked in. The other guy, like if you want to go tournament route, JJ Hardy, he has good power against left-handed pitching. He's hitting 6th behind Nelson Cruz, who also crushes lefties. Smiley's a good pitcher, but if you want to go tournament play, Hardy has the kind of upside that can deliver on that.
Yeah. Okay. I think a lot of these middle infield options tonight are just kind of gross, which is A more reason to spend dollars elsewhere, or spend up for players that you really like tonight. Or on DraftKings, take Wainwright and Price, take Wainwright and Strasburg, punt where you need to, and don't have to pay that much for hitters because some of the best hitting options tonight are not very expensive. Third base, a guy that jumped off the page right away to me was Manny Machado. He's still really inexpensive everywhere, and Smiley is a good pitcher, but he does have a big platoon advantage. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. Cardi, how many of his home runs have you regressed out?
You make fun of it, but you need to regress. Like it's like
I don't get it. I'm not smart enough to get it, so I'm going to make fun of you. It's like the high school theory of statistics. I don't understand
home
it.
run regression humor.
Yep. That's how nerdy we are. We have home run regression humor. No, I think Machado is in a good spot tonight. I am so addicted to guys who lead off or bat second. The potential value of getting 5 at bats is it's really huge. It's a reason that I like Votto a lot of nights. So are either one of you on Machado tonight?
Not
Smiley?
in particular, just because of Smiley, but I mean, I can totally see where you're coming from, where he is kind of cheap. He's in a good spot in the lineup. He's got the platoon advantage. He's at home, So I don't think he's a bad option. I just think Smiley is a little too good for my taste tonight, given that I think there's some other viable options at third.
Okay. Are we going wildly irrational with Beltre tonight, Dink?
I like Beltre. I mean, that's the one Ranger bat that I'm kind of on. The price point is a little bit elevated now, but I mean, he's just such a good hitter, and that he's a guy that hits right-handed pitching as well as he hits left-handed pitching. So if the game gets into the bullpen, it doesn't really drop off for him at all. And big power, good park. I do like him. If you're going to go the cheap route, I do like Alberto Callaspo. He's hitting 7th, but again, I don't think they're going to be as active in subbing out guys late in the game. So I think you're going to get 4 plate appearances from him. And he's dirt cheap.
Yeah,
and
I think
he's a skilled hitter too.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. I think on FanDuel, we already talked about it a little bit. I really like Valencia on FanDuel. Do you want to pay up for Wright at all? If you were paying up for like 2 hitters in your lineup, would Wright be a guy you were paying up for, Dink?
I would pay up for Beltre before Wright, but I know Mike feels differently about that. He likes Wright a little bit more. I wouldn't argue either one. Beltre is just a little bit cheaper, and that keeps being my deciding point. But I think they're both in very good spots tonight.
Yeah, Bright was definitely on my list. He gets a little bit of a park bump going from City to Yankee Stadium. Nuno's not that great of a pitcher, gives up some fly balls. So I think Wright's a good play tonight. I think if you're looking cheaper, I think Cody Ashley is a good play if you're doing like a Philly stack. I think Juan Francisco, where he qualifies at third base / not on FanDuel.
Juan Francisco is a fat guy. I was watching the Angels Jays game because I wanted to watch Cron last night. He is a fat guy.
Like, yeah, he's a fat guy but he's got awesome power. He has like ridiculous raw power. And Masterson has, platoon issues. It's at home in the Rogers Center. So I think for what he's going to cost, I think Francisco is a solid play today. I think Dominguez is a solid play today against Harrison. So there's third base options out there.
All right. Then yeah, I think we're probably good then. Do we need to do anything else before we talk about outfield? Yeah, this is where we would normally do Napster Man's competition, but we don't have Nap with us today, so we don't have anything.
That's only one day of the week.
Well, I was just looking at the Ellen real quick. I don't know why you got to be like this with me.
Well, you always mention the Napster Man competition. Like, you should know the Napster Man competition. Okay, hold on.
I've been trying to study.
Drew's taking his shirt off. Hold on. Oh, that's a nice polo you got on there, stud.
I'm just whipping through polos.
Just ripping through them.
There we go.
All right, well, let's talk about outfield tonight, because I actually, like yesterday we talked about, Trout was like a must play. I'm not seeing like tons of guys who are must plays tonight. So I'm gonna throw out someone who's leading off tonight who might be in a better spot than one would think. Colin Cowgill leading off versus Cliff Lee. Yeah, is that face that Dink summed up? There we go. Got to take off another shirt. I think with Cliff Lee, the thing is he's a very good pitcher, but he gives up lots of hits. His whip is always going to be high. He lives in the strike zone. So a guy with 4 or 5 at bats against him, I don't hate. Dink, tell me why I'm wrong.
I mean, why? Like, why mess around with Cliff Lee when you don't have to?
Because I need to save money because I'm spending on some other.
Okay, but save money on, like, I mean, there's plenty of cheap outfielders that you can go after. There's Reddick, who's really cheap on, Draft Street. There's George Springer, who's really cheap on a lot of sites. He's hitting second in a nice spot. You said you like the Astros. There's Will Venable getting a big park boost, hitting leadoff against Mike Leake. I'd rather take that shot than I would with Colin Cowgill against Cliff Lee. So I think there's other ways you can play that.
Yeah, I think if you're going to do that, I mean, the big part of that, the big draw of that matchup is the park. So if you're going to do it, I think you want to do it with someone with a little bit more power than Cowgill has. Although I can see, I mean, leading off, platoon advantage, there is the park shift, even though it might not affect him as much. But I think there's better punt options.
Yeah. Someone was talking about Beltran in chat. Beltran is hurt.
He's hurt.
Yeah.
Sure. I liked him a lot last night, and I was watching that game because I had him on a lot of teams, and his swings were really bad. And then they pulled him for a pinch hitter, like for John Ryan Murphy, in the middle of the game, and it was pretty obvious he's not right now, and he's not going to play tonight.
Can we talk about how Chris Davis and Beltran were minimum salary on Elite yesterday, and Dave got them both against Tuttle? And we thought that he got a steal of a deal, and he actually got negative points. Like, put Drew's poor performance to shame. -1 to like 93 was the score there. So Dave definitely got served, as they like to say, as amongst the youth these days. By the way, I'm playing against Davis, and I think Seth Smith got auto-drafted. But Davis is going to get served as well. I've got a Strata.
Yeah, every time someone says that, it doesn't really, because, anytime someone gets confident about this, they, end up just getting murdered.
You're, 500 among elite competition.
That's absolutely not factual.
Yeah, well, yeah, because you probably like the math and, actually count up wins versus losses, math nerd.
Yeah, nerd. I regressed out my losses, though. A guy that I wanted to talk to you guys about though was Eric Young Jr. leading off. I think they're just using him because he can DH, and I don't know why the Mets hate him so much and don't like to play him. But he actually hit a home run last night, which was something. But is he someone you guys like against a weaker left-handed pitcher in Nuno?
I think he's okay, but I think Chris Young is actually a much better play because he actually has power. He has a ridiculous true platoon split, so he's up against a weak lefty in a good hitter's park. He's batting cleanup. I think Chris Young is a really good, cheaper option tonight.
Dink, are you on either one of those guys? There you go. You guys agree on something.
Chris Young. I'm very high on Chris Young tonight for all the reasons Cardi mentioned. I mean, he's killed lefties in his career, and the big thing with Chris Young is his K and walk rates against left-hand pitching are what we thought we might get from Chris Young when he was that top prospect years and years ago. That everybody was like, oh, he might be an elite superstar. He's really good against lefties. He's okay against righties, so it's a good spot hitting cleanup.
All right. Another guy that I like is Michael Brantley. Let me look up who they versus Dickey. So Dickey has the second highest walk rate in the majors this year, and Brantley, I don't have it right in front of me, but he does walk a fair amount, batting cleanup. I think that was maybe a team that we should have mentioned more as we were going through this. But when Dickey is wild, he is really wild, and this is a team full of guys who can really hit outside of Michael Bourne. But Swisher, Brantley, Santana, Asdrubal Cabrera, David Murphy. I mean, they have a bunch of guys right there who are lefties against him. I think the Indians could be in a good spot, but Brantley's super affordable most spots.
They're getting a big park shift too, going from whatever they call it, progressive, I think, to the Rogers Center. So I think if Dickey is off, I think Cleveland could really clean up against him.
Yeah, I have some Asdrubal Cabrera exposure on sites that Lowry is expensive because he's hitting fifth. And Brantley's a guy that I like against Dickey too, just because he's got a really short, compact swing. And those guys against knuckleballers, because the ball's kind of dancing, they can extend at bats by fouling off pitches late. So I like the matchup for Brantley. I just always have a problem. I never find a good price on Brantley, is my thing.
You can never find a good price on Brantley? I mean,
Yeah, I never feel like I'm getting him at a discount. I feel like I'm always paying a little bit up for him.
is 3.6 on FanDuel too much?
Yeah, I think of him as more of like a true like 3.1, 3.2 type guy.
Okay. And then I think we have to talk about it. They don't seem to be in a good spot versus James Shields. But I think Corey Dickerson and Charlie Blackmon and Cargo, who are expensive, yeah, you disagree all you want. Dink, what happened the last time you disagree with me about Charlie Blackmon? You're losing a WOBA bet by like 50 points.
It's May 13th, Davis. I'm not concerned.
Hold on. Let's get Cardi's opinion. I want to know where Cardi lies on this. So Dink and I have a weighted on-base average bet: David Ortiz versus Charlie Blackmon.
Okay.
Which side do you like? Not knowing
Ortiz.
who took who.
Ortiz.
Damn it. All right.
I
Well,
mean,
then maybe-
Blackman's good. He's not Ortiz good.
Bro. Do not doubt Charlie Charlie Blackmon does not regress to the mean. The mean regresses to Charlie Blackmon. Okay.
Charlie.
Yeah, I'm not about them tonight. I mean, they're on the road in a pretty extreme pitcher's park against a good pitcher. I mean, all they have going for them basically is lineup position and platoon advantage, but it's platoon advantage against a good pitcher. The park is terrible for them. I don't know. Not about them tonight.
Hey, Drew. What about Brian LaHair? Was he one of your favorites?
So that was one of the worst individual bets I've ever made with Mike Leone, because I really thought the Diamondbacks front office was losing patience with Goldschmidt,
Drew.
and they were.
Drew, you know Brian LaHair's bad, Drew. Drew, you know he's not good.
I give up.
All right. Who are some... Well, I won't make you talk about that bet. I will make you talk about two more outfielder options, an expensive play that you like, and then a guy to punt.
I mean, I am like anxiously awaiting this Nationals lineup, because if Matt Williams gets some sense in his head and hits Nate McLuth in anywhere of a good spot, like I'm in on Nate McLuth, and he's like under 3K on Draft Street. So I'm eagerly awaiting this Nationals lineup. In terms of expensive guys, Nelson Cruz always crushes left-handed pitching. He's in a good ballpark. You know, Smiley's a good pitcher, but he's not priced like crazy high. Looking at Puig's in a great spot. Turner's shown reverse splits throughout his career. Puig hits right-handed pitching really great. So I like Puig a lot tonight too.
All right. One more expensive player and one more cheap player, Cardi.
All right, expensive, I'll say, I mean, relatively expensive. Jason Hayward. A little bit of a park downshift, but I really just don't believe in Vogelsong. I think Vogelsong is terrible, and I think Hayward's good, so he's my expensive guy. In terms of, like, another punt type guy, I don't know if he's a punt necessarily, but I think Lorenzo Cain is in a good spot. Not necessarily batting order-wise, but everything else I think is working out well for him. I think Josh Reddick, too, is, in a good spot tonight against Carroll. So those are some cheaper guys that I'm looking at.
Do either one of you like Trout tonight as a tournament option? His price is a little bit suppressed across the board because he hasn't been, great lately.
As a tournament option, I'm okay with it. I mean, the park shift is very favorable. He has a platoon advantage. It's just, if he manages to get good contact against Cliff Lee one time, I mean, that's going to make his night. I mean, Lee is a very good pitcher, but in GPPs as a contrarian kind of play, I'm not against it.
Yeah, I can dig that too. And then the other guys I'll mention, just it's weird because if you're spending big a pitcher, you're probably going really cheap in the outfield. But Matt Holliday is too cheap around the industry. I like Jake Arrieta a lot more than others, but he's not great. And Holliday hits right-handed pitching just as well as he hits left-handed pitching. And the Cubs bullpen's terrible behind him, so he's really underpriced.
All right. Then it is time for everyone's favorite segment. We're talking about guaranteed dongs. One everyone kind of expects it, and then one under the radar. Cardi, you first.
You know what? I'm having trouble with my not under the radar. Under the radar, I'm going Chris Young for sure. Not under the radar, I'll go I don't know. Give me a minute. I'm gonna pass a dink. Give me a minute to figure this out.
I'll go not under the radar Brandon Moss as my guy, and under the radar, man, I do like Chris Young a lot. That would have been a guy I would be looking at, but I'll go Will Venable.
Whoa!
Will Venable?
Yeah.
All right.
I don't think
guess
it's a terrible call. I mean, there's a great park shift going on there. I think Leak is a good pitcher, but as you were saying, Leak is a ground ball pitcher. So if he leaves one up and Venable, gets a hold of it, I can see it.
Okay.
I think Seth Smith, makes a little more sense in terms of dongs, but
Yeah, he's just much more expensive than Venable all the way.
well, there you go then. Okay. I don't know. In terms of less under the radar play, let's do Sal Perez. Still not like a star, but he's my not obvious guaranteed dong tonight.
All right. I'm gonna take Jaso as my obvious one because every time I take Jaso, he does nice things for me. And then my under the radar one is going to be Jesus Guzman or LJ Hose. I think they might both dong. Honestly, the entire Astros lineup might hit a home run. Like they literally might have 9 home runs as a team tonight. That might be something that happens.
What about Kyle in the chat posting the goodness that is Puig bobblehead night tonight in L.A.?
We all already knew that it was.
That is like
Kevin Franzen? What the hell are you doing now?
This is a guy who batted Bryce Harper 6th, Drew.
That is so inexcusable. Oh my god.
Do you hate Matt Williams more than you hate Kirk Gibson?
The combined managerial intelligence in that field tonight.
Oh, I didn't even realize they were playing against each other. Yeah, it's gonna be yakety sacks by the 5th inning.
So Arroyo gets to face 7 righties. That is not the way to construct a lineup against Arroyo. Gee,
Is Cy Arroyo gonna make a comeback tonight? Because it's infuriating when he pitches well.
he might pitch well tonight. That is as favorable a lineup as he might see all year.
You're saying he's a cash game option?
No, I still wouldn't trust him. But he's pretty good against righties. He's really terrible against lefties.
All right. Well, let's talk about these drafts, Kitchen.
Yeah, I'm currently. Let's see.
Losing so hard.
I went with
so hard.
Estrada and Leak. You went with Cole and Kuischel. And then you went with Altuve, Pedro Pena, who I thought was a stretch at catcher.
He's being second, though.
Well, who cares? Victorino, Josh Harrison, Scooter, Grady. I really think that's kind of a meh lineup. You look at mine. I got Estrada, Leak, and then Ortiz, Rios.
Yeah, your pitchers suck, dude.
Oh yeah, and yours are so much better. Dallas is gonna get hammered.
He's gonna go 6 innings pitched, 4 Ks, 1 earned run.
Garrett is going to be.
He's gonna be the guy that kills you. He's gonna be the guy that.
No, he's gonna be the guy that gets tossed tonight. He's gonna get.
Oh
tossed.
yeah, is that gonna happen?
Yeah.
Are we projecting ejections in daily fantasy sports now? How does that factor into your model, Drew?
I don't know.
It is called projection.
Oh!
Nope.
Oh!
No, don't react to that. Don't give it to him.
Dang. Davis just got served on national TV. Wow!
Kitchen has been a really bad influence on you, Drew. Whereas I have been a great influence and made you so much better on Twitter, Kitchen has taught you how to do dad jokes.
All right.
Dad joke. I don't know. Have you seen my father in chat? Like dad jokes are a genetic thing for me. Like they've been passed down. So I don't think you can blame Kitchen for that.
Yeah, it's just true. By the way, Yasmani Grandal not in the lineup. He was an auto pick with Seth Smith. I subbed out Smith for a little bit of Chu action. I like Texas bats, and even though it's a lefty on lefty, Chu was my last pick. He's not at a bad price at $10K there. But I really like your lineup is probably the unsexiest elite lineup I've ever seen.
Unsexy does well on Elite as long as you have 2 good pitchers.
Oh.
I'm gonna get 40 points out of my pitchers, and you're gonna be at an immediate disadvantage because Estrada's gonna get you negatives.
No, Estrada's not bad tonight. I actually like Dave's pitchers better than yours tonight.
Boom!
All right, well,
You know what that?
Speaking of Estrada, tournament plays Pedro Alvarez.
yeah. He's does he have a big home run score in your model?
The park
He
shit
does.
there is just
He
huge
does.
for
He
him.
does.
Yeah.
He does. But I mean, like, he won't be high owned because people will look at BVP and he struck out like 8 times in like 12 at bats against Estrada or whatever.
Do people really look at BVP?
Yes.
It is a major flaw in thinking, and I think it is brought over. We can, like,
Someone make sure Tommy's not in the chat when
Or-
Kitchen talks about this.
we're already like, well, it's funny because we're already running over, so I'll just make it short and sweet. But basically, I think the season-long community brought over BVP. The daily community has kind of moved past it. Season-long still focuses.
I
I wouldn't put that on season long, guys, because like that's where when I first started playing daily like 3 or 4 years ago, that's what people were touting. That's what everybody was talking about.
I
And
think
it wasn't just season long people. It was people who were running daily websites.
what I'm saying is that the daily side has moved past it. Most of the daily
For the
side.
most part.
For the most part.
Well, Tommy is in chat telling us that all 4 of us are so smart but also so stupid. So you tell me where the daily fantasy community is at right now, David Kitchen. And by the way, just for everyone listening, none of us are saying that Tommy's not a good player, but we're saying that we play daily a lot different than he does.
Tommy doesn't like math. He likes to play off emotion, and that's fine. People play different ways. So,
Tommy, how many dongs is Carlos Gomez hitting off Garrett Cole tonight?
oh man, we do want to give a special shout out to Tommy for beating Brett Favre last night. It was exactly what I wanted it to be. It was a down to the wire first place finish for Tommy. I mean, it was like up and down roller coaster all night. Tommy's butt.
I thought Joe Madden beat Brett Favre last night.
Oh yeah. If it was up to Tommy, he would have lost big time because he was so mad at Joe Madden, and it would have been funny, kind of, if he was on the opposite side of that because of his whole skill game thing. Because he did catch a break there. He caught a break that a pitcher was in there, and it happened to be the first game of a 7-game road trip, and the situation warranted basically his pitcher going back in for another 6 innings. Wouldn't have got that any other time. So he caught the break there. It's funny because of his NBA rants. But he did he did beat Brett Favre, which no one else can say. So shout out to Tommy for doing that. We'll have to get
Tuttle's taking him on next. I thought that's what I heard.
No, if Tommy lost, Tuttle was going to bear that cross, but he didn't. So I think Tuttle likes.
I think Tuttle should do it anyway.
Tuttle likes his money. I mean, it's not a positive EV bet, but
No.
we'll talk
It's not
about all that later. We've got to go. I mean, it's a Tuesday, so people have got to get lineups on. I want to say thanks to Fantasy Elite for sponsoring the show, and Davis, you and I have a couple of games going on. I also played against STL Cardinals 84. He's got a Hundy game in there, a $56 game. So STL Cardinals 84 is posted up in the Fantasy Elite room if you want to take some drafts on against him. I'll be drafting more later on tonight. I like the late
Everyone
slate.
needs to give Drew a round of applause.
Yeah. So thanks to Drew Dinkmeyer from Roto Experts. You can read all his stuff at rotoexperts.com. Look for the Daily Fantasy Rundown that he and Mike Leone do. Derek and Davis also write for Fantasy Insider. So good show, guys. And you know what? We'll just plan on doing it big again tomorrow with Dan, Cardi, and Davis. Drew, can you give us a little dance as we kind of wrap this show up? It's the worst dance ever. Come on. Put a little hip into it.
Oh, that was great. That was one of the better shows ever. That was so fun.
Oh, do you have another shirt underneath that? Or is that the last one?
That's the last one. I got through all of them.
Take it
How
off.
sweaty is that shirt, Dink?
I'm back to the original Fantasy Insider shirt.
Well, I'm glad.
Look at that magic trick I pulled.
How sweaty is that shirt, Drew?
Very, very.
All right, guys. We'll see y'all later.